I'm here with Jack and Adrienne of Seven Spires to talk about their latest offering, A Fortress Called Home, out June 21st on Frontiers Music. Always a pleasure to see your wonderful faces, and always a pleasure to talk to the two of you, and even better when there's a new record coming out.
Thank you.
Likewise, it's
Always
good to see you,
great.
man.
So let's start from the beginning. A Fortress Called Home. Uh, what inspired this record? And once the listener presses play, what stories does it have in store for the listener?
Well, that's a very broad question to start with.
Yep.
I want to give you
You
enough
want
because
to,
I don't know how much you want to talk about it. I don't know how much you want to say it. I don't know how much you want to spoil it or how much you want to keep it for that moment when the listener gets the album. So I'm trying to start with a question that leaves enough room for you to say a lot or to say very little.
Sounds
Jack, do you want
good.
to maybe start and then I'll pick up where you leave off?
Yeah, sure. I mean, anybody who knows us by now knows that there are a lot of things that inspired this record, not just one thing. So in standard Seven Spires fashion, you're gonna go from point A to point Z and a lot of other weird places in between. And hopefully at the end it'll sound like a cohesive emotional journey. I've been kind of describing this record. Uh, it's the first one that we've done that isn't like a super linear storyline of like there is a character and they go to a place and they do a thing and it happens in that order. And it's more like a curated emotional journey through maybe some of the feelings and topics that inspired the first three records. So it's sort of in the orbit of, but it's not a continuation of in that sense.
Yep, solid, actually. I have been telling people that's exactly what you say, and then I've been calling it some sort of spiritual successor. Still kind of within the universe of the first three albums, but um also it kind of is its own thing, I would say. And yeah, I mean, as Jack said, in terms of what inspired it, I basically with every album, we live and then we process and then we make art from what comes from that. And that's pretty much this record.
uh, when I was listening to this album, I mean, I've been listening to you guys since the beginning. So for me, I've been engaged in the experience of what Seven Spires is, and with every record, I see you guys opening new doors and not going too far off the beaten path, but definitely bringing other elements into the mix. And when I was listening to this album, I felt that perhaps this is the album that has the biggest leap forward when you compare it to the previous records both musically and vocally. It's in my humble opinion the most complete album you guys have ever done. So when you sat down to create this record, did you guys have in mind what do we need to do both musically and vocally to not just grow as a band, but to also surpass what the previous records had to offer?
That's also
I
a hard question to answer because we don't really sit down and think, oh, we need to top the last one, or we need to push this or push that. The most important thing is that the songs individually and the album as a whole are the best version of what they want to be. And hopefully we can get out of the way enough to just kind of let them be that. Whether that's something that's completely all over the place and new and groundbreaking for us that we haven't done yet, or whether it's a really simple ballad that, you know, just has some acoustic guitars and there's nothing really that crazy going on. Whatever it wants to be, I think is the end goal. And then we just kind of have the experience of making those previous ones. So maybe recording it, like we can give an extra 10% because our peak, like technique wise, or just like our past experience informs the next one. So yeah, I don't know if that made sense in the way it made sense in my brain. But the goal isn't really to do like better than the last record. It's to do this record the best it can possibly be.
Yeah,
Do
you
you feel
pretty much
similar?
said exactly. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, do you feel similar? Is that your view as well?
I would say so. I think as craftspeople, we're always trying to improve, and I think we're all lifelong students of our various fields. But as artists, I think it's never the intention to put out something that was better than the last one. It's just, yeah, I want to be a better singer. I want to make better vocal arrangements. But that doesn't mean that I want the record to be better than the last one. It's just like my hunger for self-improvement leaks into our artistry.
Yeah. And like if you think about it that way too, then you're always going to be upset when someone likes the previous thing better. You know, like there are always going
True.
to be the people that champion the first album or the second album. And like if you really think you did something that's just better than those, then how do you handle when someone really fell in love with something you did before? I think then it's missing the point. Like if you take a photograph of a bird and you take a photograph of a flower, who are you to say which one is better? The only way you can really judge that is like on the technical side, and that's, I guess, what we can keep improving objectively.
But does it really matter that much what other people think at the end of the day? Is it more important that you look at the record and you feel like this album accomplished something that you hadn't accomplished before, or give you an opportunity to try something that you haven't tried before?
Absolutely, yeah. For us, that's most important. But also it is important. It's not important that other people think what we want them to think or feel what we want them to feel, but it is important that they feel something. Whether
Yes.
that's, you know, whatever it is, or whether they hate it. And that's, you know, what,
Mhm.
you know, as long as it's a strong reaction, I'm happy.
You just don't want
Yeah.
indifference.
Yeah, yeah. If it's like meh, then I failed.
I, I I I don't think I've ever met anybody that's heard one of your records and said, eh, you know. I don't think that's possible. I mean, you guys, the way you craft records is really interesting to me. And as a fan, I see this album as the pinnacle of what the previous records set the table for. I don't think you could create this album without the experiences of the previous ones. I think it's for me feels like the logical next step. It just feels like it wasn't just a step. You guys completely leaped forward. You took more than a step. You just jumped forward in terms of what you deliver with this album. And I have to ask you this because while Adrienne had toured a lot with other projects, singing and doing other things, Seven Spires since the last record, I feel like you guys have been touring quite a bit as a unit. So touring, one thing is the personal experience that you guys have that you bring in, and the other thing is the experience that you guys have as a collective. Did those experiences as a collective also help shape this record?
That's a really good question.
I yes, of course, but how is the big question.
I mean,
Have you
so
ever thought about that before?
I
Because it's
no, but
different, you know?
that's yeah, totally. But okay, so I mean, I have like a starting point for this, and maybe Jack, you can pick up if it inspires you. But I would say like some of the tours that we've done in the last couple of years may not have like shaped us necessarily, but provided like the missing key for something. For example, the first full song on the record was already basically written before we went on this Twilight Force tour, but it was like it wasn't really ready. It was like fully baked, but it needed something. And the friendships on that tour and the sheer like joy and exhilaration of watching Twilight Force every night, those were the ingredients that were missing that made Songs Upon Wine-Stained Tongues what it is. And I think we were all able to sort of like bring our own version of those elements to the song. And same thing for like um, one of the later tracks on the album, No Place for Us, was inspired by, at least on my part, like how I felt when we were playing with Omnium Gatherum every night last year. Um, and just this sort of like soft, glowing hope, but also like a sort of like fun amount of brutality in a way. I don't know. What do you think, Jack?
Yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it, and I think a lot of it happens subconsciously to a degree as well. Like when we're touring together with Spires, like not only are we playing, the same songs every night from previous albums that like it slowly our lowest default as players is creeping up because those things that were really difficult to play when we were recording have to become easier so we can put on a show. So that brings the level up as well, and that kind of the lower default of what we can put out helps in that way. And then those experiences and meeting new people and discussing artistry with them, or meeting fans that we haven't met before, or people at shows for the first time. Like it all feeds who we are as people, and then who we are as people determines what comes out on the other side as the next round of music, I think. And that can only be like intentional to some degree, and some of it has to happen naturally.
Yep. I would also add that time spent together while on tour, we always have like these amazing deep conversations like between us, and a lot of what is discussed can sometimes end up on record. And also like talking about different techniques, or like Pete's like, I want to sing more. So we have more of him singing on this record, stuff like that. Which is cool, yeah.
Yeah,
But
I
yeah, I'm
actually,
not sure if that like really answers your question.
yeah, no, it does, and it actually adds another question because um, when it comes to the vocals, for example, and we'll give Jack his own 15 minutes of fame and give him the guitar talk and the production and all of the stuff that he did. He did a lot of work on this record. But when it comes to the vocals, I feel like this album is perhaps one of the most dynamic ones that you guys have ever delivered. There's a lot of textures. There's a lot of different tonalities. You know uh, there's I mean there's no there's no nothing necessarily new or completely outside the box that we haven't seen, but I felt like there was a lot more life, there was a lot more energy. Even harsh vocals, I felt there was more harsh vocals on this record than perhaps some of the previous ones. So all of that stuff, to me, it felt, at least from my standpoint, that also comes from those live experiences and understanding what works, what doesn't work, and what works for the song, but will also represent the song well in a live setting. As a vocalist, do you take a lot do you have like a memory bank where when you're performing on stage and you see things that are working out and you're like, yeah, you know what, that would work on the next song, or maybe I can incorporate this here and there because it would be something cool.
I totally do. Um, and it happens like I'll draw on that memory bank while on stage thinking about like, oh, I learned this in a lesson with Britta or something, and I'll like think about that technique. Or it'll be something like I have to be one of the lead vocalists for LBT for 5 weeks, and then I come away from that and make this record as a completely new death metal vocalist. So yeah, the memory banks are definitely there, and it's also strongly fueled by like feelings and like the experiences surrounding different techniques. And um I think also to touch on the textural variety, I guess, on the record. When we were doing vocal recording, I was in like a super raw emotional state. I think on day 2 or 3, um, I got this terrible call from my mother that they couldn't treat my grandmother's cancer anymore. And I just felt like basically the whole time we were recording, I felt like my organs were just like rotting into this fluid and sloshing out of my rib cage. And so I think it was horrible to record like this, but I feel like we got some like really visceral sounds because of this very special circumstance. So yeah, there's that too.
Making something positive out of something negative. It's not always
Absolutely.
easy, but by the way, I feel for you. I'm going through something in my personal life with somebody with cancer. Throughout, the last couple of months have been crazy. It's something that touches all of us. I don't know anybody who's not been touched one way or another by cancer. So my heart goes out to you. I know how difficult
Likewise.
it is because I'm going through the same thing similar. Yeah, so it's difficult. It's difficult to have that on the back of your mind and still be able to go and perform and but at least to bring that energy and make it something positive. I think it comes across. This album sounds very organic from that standpoint, very emotional. And I had to ask you about the additional vocals because you guys have some guest vocalists on the record. Like you said, Peter does a little bit more vocals as well. Was that from a storytelling standpoint, or it was once again you guys trying to enrich what the experience is going to be all about?
There was one song, actually, The Old Herd of Being Left Behind. This line, it was a topic that we had discussed like a long time ago. I think I had seen it, so like a quote that was similar to that somewhere, and I wrote it, and I knew that he had experienced something that I thought like, wow, he really needs to tell his version of this too. And I thought it was just going to be like an upright bass solo, and then we were like, maybe we can have some Adrienne and Pete harmonies. But then I think when we were recording vocals, it was just like, well, let's try this and let's try that. And what about this spot? Right, Jack?
Yeah, I think with Pete learning to sing and learning to scream and doing it a lot live and in other contexts as well, it was only natural to like find spots that it would work. And there's a lot of spots where he's doing backing vocals and backing screams and stuff that aren't nearly as prominent as some of the lead spots. But I think it's a mix of we have this thing, let's use it because it's fun, and then the other part of it is like where can where can we make a spot for him or whoever the vocalist is to tell their version of this story. And I think that worked really well, especially in Pete's case, because we know him super well, and like finding the emotionally devastating ones for him to try and sing is like sorry,
This is
but not
Jack's
sorry.
specialty. Jack knows how to make everybody in the band cry. And this like gets the best recording.
Wow, what a thing to put on your resume. How did he feel to have to carry the torch left behind by Mr. Khan?
Oh
I
man.
think he likes it.
Yeah.
Because that's a big torch. That's a big torch.
Oh yeah.
Big shoes to
Yeah.
fill.
And he's the one doing that song live usually when we play it as well. And it's I think he knows and the world knows and like everybody knows it's not going to be the same. So it's just like, you know, he does a great job with it with his own voice, and it's nobody can be Roy Khan and like pull that off in the way that he does. So.
That is for sure. But now, since we're talking about Pete, let me ask you about the bass. This is the most bass I've heard from him on any record. Really predominant in the mix, but not in a bad way at all. I thought it was really cool because it added some groove, but it also added some darkness. It added some technical elements. It added some proggy elements. It had so much to give. How much did he pay you, Jack, to when you're putting together, hype up his bass on the mix?
You know, I think it's always kind of something that he's hyper aware of because you know it's almost like a cliche in metal, like where's the bass? It's just playing the same thing as the guitars but quieter and you can't hear it and whatever. Like it's totally a thing. And when you are someone as proficient and as creative as him on the instrument, it's always a fight to like find your spot in the song and stuff. So it was definitely something that we talked about a lot. There was a lot of back and forth between me and him and picking sounds and making sure it was cool. And my job as the producer and as the mixing engineer this time around was to, you know, get it pretty fucking cranked, but in a way that serves the song and doesn't take away from it. And you know, he flew here so that we could fist fight a few times, and then I think it worked out. But no, I'm super happy with it, and I think that it would be a disservice to the music to not have what he's doing be audible, because it does, like he takes the time to write parts that will serve the music and will bring that extra bit to it. And why would you want to bury that?
No,
I think it's part of what makes us sound the way we do.
yeah, this album for me makes it really difficult to put you guys under one single umbrella. I know a lot of people say symphonic metal, but this album makes it impossible to do that. Like when you look at the bass work on this record, it's so proggy, so technical. You don't hear that in symphonic metal bands. You don't. So it makes it impossible to say this album is this category because it's not. It's just music. It's just great music that you have to enjoy. Now with Jack doing
You
production,
have to.
mixing, mastering. Adrienne, any interest from you to do some of those things as well and expand your portfolio, if you will?
I am very happy orchestrating and working on arrangements, and I do not need another high attention to detail type of skill set. Jack has Jack is so good at this. He's always been good at it, and he improved so quickly. I call him for every mix and basically every recording, like engineer type of gig, even if I can just do it myself. I so much rather just have him do it because he's so good. Why would I? It's like, why would I learn to play lead guitar when I have a Jack? Why would I learn to mix when I have Jack? So
He's
I
a jack
paid
of
her
all trades.
much
the
love.
same amount that Pete paid me to turn the bass up on the record. I paid her to say that.
To say that. By the way, he has this great contact page on his website. So if you need a mix, you can go. He just updated his portfolio. There's a lot of great albums, including ours and our live. Anyway, sorry.
Listen, I'm all for that because when I saw the press release, even before I pressed play on the record, and I saw that you did the production, the mixing, the mastering, I was like, wow, this guy really wants a paycheck because obviously playing guitar is just not paying enough. So he wants to like, get a little bit of a bonus for all this extra effort. But then when I press play, I'm like, wait a minute, like he knows what he's doing. Like this is really good. This is really good.
Thank
So
you.
how long has it taken you to get to the point where you can make an album? Because by the way, this album is not easy to produce. It's not easy to make. It's not. Like for anybody who sits down and listens to this record, you could tell. I could almost hear the hours that went in the working of making this album. So how long has it taken you to get to the point where you can grab a record like this and then deliver the final results the way we see it?
Oh, that's also a tough question because it started. I'll crash course through when I started paying attention to this stuff and get to now. Like my first foray into the production side of thing was being obsessed with guitar sounds and like trying to get my tone the way I wanted it live and on record. And then there was an epiphany when I realized that it doesn't matter because if everything else sounds terrible, it's going to sound terrible anyway. And from then, I just kind of fell in love with it and started learning more and more and more. And since Emerald Seas, I was recording almost everything on the albums as well. And then we would send to Sasha to do what he does. And the experience from recording stuff and then hearing what Sasha does to it um, also really kind of helped me figure out a lot about what it takes to make a record like this. And it got to the point of doing so many songs and albums and stuff where this time around, I knew like I had like a very strong idea of how it should present, how it should sound, how everything should be, that I knew that I had to do it myself or I was gonna give Sasha an aneurysm. So it was pretty much like I kind of fought for it for a while and I knew I could deliver only because of the blood, sweat, and tears that I had put into learning it. And I think part of why it came out sounding the way it does, that like you said, pretty raw, organic, and pretty like diverse vocally and orchestrally and stuff, is I've been in a room rehearsing or on stage playing and or even just like in the kitchen while Adrienne's practicing stuff. Like I know how all of these guys sound like 10 feet in front of me. And I wanted that to come through more than anything else. And so I think, the drums sound like Chris playing his kit in the room, and the vocals sound like Adrienne's 10 feet in front of you singing. and then I put reverb
Right.
on it or something, you know, like it's just what they sound like coming out of the speakers. And that was kind of the goal. And I hope I achieved that, but whether I did or not, it seems like people are into it. So
You
yay.
I
definitely
didn't
achieve
realize
it.
that was your approach.
So you learned
Yeah.
something new today.
Yeah. I mean, I also really feel like the way you represented, or the way you, yeah, represented me on this record is so flattering. Um, so if that's what you think I sound like, great. Thanks.
Yeah. I didn't do very much. That is what you sound like.
Okay.
You
That's
sound
cool, man.
you sound incredible on this record. I mean, everybody sounds incredible on this record. Your voice on this album. Some songs I feel like I'm listening to something out of a Disney movie. Some songs I feel like I'm listening to something out of like a drama or like a dark film. Like your ability to translate the emotion of the lyrics and the emotion of the sound into your own voice and then put that on a track to me is like bar none. Not many people can do what you can do because I've said this in a reaction video that we did about of a different band, had nothing to do with you guys, and I said that you're one of the few people, I think I can count three, that can sound cold as ice or warm as the sun on the same track. Like it's so difficult to have those emotions that are so distant from one another coexist on a single track, and you're able to have your voice sound both cold and warm. I think it's incredible, and you definitely deliver that on this record. So if it's the mixing, you owe him something, maybe a lunch or something.
Yeah, I at least. And you for saying that. Thank you.
If anything, it's for knowing what not to do. Like I don't want to fight against what's already working good. So that's why it just came out good, is that it was already working and I didn't have to ruin it.
Don't fix it. Don't fix what it ain't broken. Now,
Exactly.
one last question for you guys because we're running out of time, and that is, you mentioned Chris on drums. This is the last record I'm assuming that he's going to be doing with you. I mean, I'm assuming, and you know what happens when you assume, you make an ass out of you and me. But I'm assuming that this will be
Sure.
the last record with him on it. How does that feel? A little bit bittersweet.
Totally bittersweet. It was a weird experience, like kind of seeing the writing on the wall and then him having made that decision, and it's totally weird. Like when you're basically like family with someone for 10 years and you never imagine that that situation would change, it's just strange, and there's no other way to really describe it.
Mm.
But on, you know, on the other hand, like your friend getting a chance to join a band that they grew up like, you know, loving and basically worshiping, is like, we couldn't be happier for him. So I think we're just happy that the scheduling worked out, that, you know, he still wanted to do the record. We had written the songs with him in mind, assuming that he was going to play on them, so it was good in that way. And then even the music videos, like it worked out that something changed with the Testament schedule and he was able to make those video shoots as well. So I think, you know, we're also assuming it's the last record he'll do with us. There's no plans to, you know, do anything else. It's kind of split and that's how it is. But uh yeah, I think it's a great send off and how it was intended to be from the start. So now we
Yeah.
close that book and open a new one and move on. Anything to add?
Adrienne is thinking, do I want to play drums? Hmm.
No, not for Seven Spires. Are you kidding? Yeah, I mean, Jack basically nailed it. It's very bittersweet. I feel very fortunate that he's the drummer on this record. And you know, as much as I wish that that it wasn't his last one, I am sincerely so happy that he gets to do what he basically, I think what he told his like high school college counselor what he was gonna do when he grew up, and you know what, he grew up and he did it, and that's so fucking cool. So,
Not
and
everybody gets
I ran
that.
into him. That's right, yeah, I went to a show in Boston last month, well, okay, in April, and I saw him and Bianca there, his wife, and it was such a cool vibe. And we hung out with Lima Shade people because they were also in LVAT, and we all had like this big friend group during that tour. And it was just super cool, and like it didn't feel like anything had changed like socially, and it was just like, so will I see you at Bakken this year? With Testament, I'll be with Avantasia, and yeah, like cool, bro, see you out there, and be safe and everything. Yeah, so it wasn't like bad or anything, and
No, no,
I
I
think
didn't. I never. Honestly, I
it's
never got that vibe either. I always felt like if Jack wants to go see Testament the next time they come to town, Chris will for sure put him on the guest list. So I don't think that's going to be an issue. He's not
Yeah,
going to make Jack
if
buy a
Testament
ticket.
comes to my town, I live in the middle of fucking nowhere, so
Well, the town
Testament will
nearby.
be playing the tiki hut down by the beach with one light.
in Margaritaville.
Oh, yeah, I thought that would be happening, but you can also dream. You never know. You know what I mean? You know,
It
if
would
they
be fun.
if you build it, they will come. So I mean, just keep building it.
We can
Guys,
call
thank
it
you very
golf stock.
thank you very much for your time today. I really appreciate it. I just want to say once again how incredible this album is. Your work on it is just phenomenal, phenomenal. I get emotional thinking about like seeing you guys playing like really small shows here in Toronto, to see what you guys are doing now, the tours that you're doing, the records that you're releasing. This album to me, it hit home. It's just like a phenomenal album all around. So congratulations to all the work that you guys have put into this record, and go get them.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. You've been with us from very early on, and it's always great to chat and catch up. And I look forward to seeing you guys the next time we're in Toronto.
Me too. Looking
Same
forward to you
here,
guys
same
playing
here.
some new tracks on the next tour, on the next show. And take care, guys. All the best.
You too,
You
man.
too.
See you.
Thank you.